Between 2012 and 2016, China detonated, scraped, and hauled away 700 million cubic meters of earth, enough to bury Manhattan under 30 feet of rubble, just to flatten over 400 mountains in a single province. They did it to build a brand new city from absolute scratch. A city that was supposed to house 1 million people, anchor a new Silk Road economy, and prove that Chinese engineering could literally reshape the planet. Today, that city sits largely empty. So the question isn't just how China pulled off one of the most audacious feats of terraforming in human history. The real question is, what happens when the most powerful infrastructure machine ever built creates something that nobody wants to live in? Here's what makes this story impossible to ignore. This wasn't a mistake made in some obscure corner of the world by a cash-strapped government trying to look busy. This was a deliberate, fully funded, nationally endorsed megaproject, backed by the full economic and political weight of the People's Republic of China. China doesn't build small. When it decides to move, it moves mountains, sometimes literally. The engineers who designed Lanzhou New Area solved problems that had never been solved before. They conquered terrain that geologists considered unconquerable. They hit deadlines that would have paralyzed any other nation's construction sector. And when the dust settled, and there was an enormous amount of dust, they had produced something that looks, from satellite imagery, looked like a fully functioning modern city. Except the streets are quiet, the apartments are dark, the malls are empty, and the mountains are gone forever. This is the story of Lanzhou New Area, and it should make you deeply curious and more than a little unsettled about the world being built around you right now. China didn't just build on land, it manufactured land that didn't exist. And what they did to the landscape of Gansu Province still doesn't feel real, even when you're staring at the satellite photos. The Loess Plateau in Gansu Province is one of the most geologically chaotic landscapes on Earth. A labyrinth of ridges, gullies, and peaks that looks from above like a crumpled brain. For thousands of years, people carved homes directly into the hillsides just to find somewhere flat enough to sleep. Chinese planners looked at this terrain and made a decision that even by their own extraordinary standards was breathtaking. They would erase it. Over 700 million cubic meters of earth were moved, 7 times the material, and are required to build the Three Gorges Dam, the largest concrete structure in human history. Hills were detonated and scraped flat. Valleys were filled using the rubble of the peaks above them. At peak construction, tens of thousands of workers and hundreds of machines operated simultaneously, rearranging the surface of the Earth with geological aggression. The engineering challenges were severe. Low soil is notoriously unstable when wet. It compacts, shifts, and collapses. Engineers had to design entirely new compaction protocols to prevent the freshly built plateau from sinking unevenly beneath the weight of the city they planned to place on it. Meanwhile, the human cost was immediate. Villages reported days where visibility dropped to near zero. The air itself turned the color of earth. Farmers lost entire harvests because construction dust blocked the sun and coated their fields in sterile sediment for years. By 2015, the transformation was complete and irreversible. Where mountains had stood for millennia, there was now a raw, flat plateau the size of a mid-sized city. Those mountains are not coming back. Ever. Building the terrain was only half the gamble. The other half was the idea. A theory so bold that if it works, it reshapes the global economy. If it doesn't, it's the most expensive planning failure in history. Lanzhou sits almost exactly at the geographic center of China. For most of modern history, that was an economic curse. Too far from the coastal ports, too isolated from the manufacturing belts that drove China's growth. But in the framework of the Belt and Road Initiative, being in the center of China meant being at the crossroads of Eurasia. Rail lines running west toward Central Asia and Europe, south toward Pakistan, east toward Shanghai, all converging here. Lanzhou New Area was designated a national-level new area in 2012, giving it preferential tax status, relaxed regulations, and direct central government backing. Total investment estimates range between $60 billion and $100 billion. That's roughly the annual GDP of a mid-sized European country, poured into a single planned zone in one of China's poorest provinces. Roads were built to nowhere. Apartment towers rose in identical clusters across the new plateau. Schools, hospitals, convention centers, and gleaming shopping malls were completed and opened, all before a meaningful population existed to use them. The businesses that were supposed to fill the industrial parks came slowly and thinly. The tax incentives were real, but so was the distance from suppliers and skilled workers. The apartments were purchased, but mostly by investors treating them as assets, not homes. Units sat dark and empty. Occupancy estimates from various observers have ranged between 15 and 30% of designed capacity. The photographs journalists brought back from visits are genuinely disquieting. Perfectly engineered boulevards, functioning traffic lights, zero traffic. Ghost City sounds like a disaster. But the reality is stranger and more important than that simple label suggests. Some of China's planned new areas have succeeded. Pudong in Shanghai was called a ghost city in the 1990s. It is now some of the most valuable real estate on Earth. Chinese officials point to this constantly, and they're not wrong to. But Lanzhou faces structural challenges that time alone may not fix. The climate is harsh. Young Chinese workers continue migrating to Shenzhen and Chengdu, cities with existing density, established wages, and the gravitational pull that only real cities possess. No government policy has successfully overridden that human preference. There is also a debt problem. Lanzhou New Area's development was financed through local government borrowing vehicles, backed by land sales and projected future revenues. When properties don't sell and businesses don't come, that model breaks. It's the same mechanism behind the collapse of Evergrande and Country Garden. Developers whose failures have already sent shockwaves through the global financial system. And there's a human story that satellite images miss entirely. Farming communities who lived among those valleys for generations were relocated into tower blocks as compensation for their land. Former farmers, placed in urban apartments with no agricultural access and insufficient job training, have found themselves structurally unemployed in a city designed for people with completely different skills. Their landscape is gone. Their way of life is gone. And the replacement hasn't delivered what was promised. Lanzhou New Area is not dead. Economic activity is slowly growing. The free trade zone has attracted real logistics operations. Population has risen, modestly, but measurably. It exists in a strange middle state, more alive than its harshest critics claim, far emptier than its designers intended. Here is the detail almost no one mentions. China has done this 19 times. 19 national-level new areas, each following the same template. Extraordinary infrastructure, preferential policy, enormous debt, and then the wait. Some are working, some are Lanzhou. But what should stay with you is this. Those 400 mountains in Gansu Province are gone forever. The ecosystems, the watersheds, the communities shaped by that landscape, permanently altered. And the justification for all of it, a thriving million-person city, still hasn't arrived. The Earth was reshaped for a bet, A bet placed by the most powerful infrastructure machine in human history. And that bet is still not resolved. So tell me in the comments, if Lanzhou New Area fully thrives in 30 years, does that justify permanently destroying 400 mountains to build it? Or is there a line that no amount of future success can ever uncross? Because that question isn't just about China. It's being asked right now on every continent. Every time a government decides that progress is worth the price.